So it's time to fire up this old banger and hit the road.
I'm not overly happy about driving this thing in this weather. Move over!
I have just pulled Heidi's doors out. Yeah, they've just come out so good. I'm going to turn my attention to Heidi's fuel tank, and then one of the two clips, I forgot to get the other one done, unfortunately. All right, so I've actually ended up taking this apart. Toothbrush, which wasn't harsh enough. Wire brush, which also wasn't doing much. And look at all that. Pretty pitted. They were pretty badly rusted. I have spent hours and hours on Heidi's fuel sender. Leave it all the way up. We're getting around 11. But there is actually one other thing I've been messing around with for Heidi today. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and today it's finally time to take Esther, my ST170 powered Mk1 Escort, back to her garage, and then I can bring Maude, my moredoor Mk2 Escort, back home here to her garage. And Maude is going to feel right at home now that I've got my brand new Maude banner up on the wall here in her garage. Those Maude banners, as well as my Esther banners, are available on my website at marcushayesuk.com, both available with a black or a white background. And while we're on the subject of new merch, I've now got my brand new Esther sticker on Esther's rear quarter window, which are also, of course, available on my website, along with the brand new Maude stickers. And I've got brand new Maude and Esther mugs available as well in black and white. And I'm actually running a bit of a sale on my website at the moment, including the old Maude and Esther mugs and stickers. So yeah, head over to my website and see if anything tickles your fancy. I recently acquired 3 of these Mk1 Focus alloys, 2 of which seem like they've got decent tyres. This one actually looks brand new. 15-inch as fitted 2 Mk1 Focuses, as I say. So if anyone's in the market for these alloys, or just one of them, yeah, I'm selling them really cheap, and they're here at my garage in Hertfordshire. So drop me an email if anyone's interested. If I don't have any bites, then I've got a guy that can get rid of the tyres, and I'll scrap the wheels. Anyway, half the day has already gone, so I need to get cracking. So it's time to fire up this old banger and hit the road.
Well, I'm not overly happy about driving this thing in this weather, but I'm not that strict about that sort of thing anymore. You know, gone are the days where I was strictly never ever going to drive this thing unless I was 100% sure that it was going to stay dry all day. It's just unrealistic when you're living in England. You know, these things are about having fun, not about preserving for as long as possible. Although, you know, I do try and look after this one a bit better than I look after Maude, who is absolute junk. I've actually got a little bit of an issue with the clutch on this thing. It sort of feels like there's not enough throw on it. I have adjusted the bump stop on the back of the clutch pedal slightly, and that doesn't seem to have improved it much. Maybe it needs a bleed because this thing's got a hydraulic clutch, or maybe there's something else going on, I don't know. Yeah, I will be diving into, you know, having a good look at this thing, taking it apart to do a couple of jobs over winter, so I'll worry about it then. It sort of varies. The issue is kind of intermittent, so yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's probably air in the system, to be honest. But I will be taking the gearbox off the back of the engine at some point in the near future, just to try and reattach the crank sensor bracket, because that rattles about. And the only way I can get to the screw on that is by pulling the gearbox off. So yeah, we'll worry about any potential clutch issues then. This thing does have a little bit of rust in the engine bay right next to the passenger side bonnet hinge, and I'm actually considering having a go at doing that job myself, mainly because my beautiful girlfriend Kat bought me a welder for Christmas. Now, she actually bought me a gasless MIG welder, so she sent that back, and I'm going to be choosing a gassed MIG welder instead. But yeah, I've got loads of welding to do on Maude as well, which I was definitely going to, you know, I definitely decided I was going to dive into doing myself. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll have a go at doing the little welding job on this as well. It's going to involve me drilling out the spot welds to the hinge bracket and moving that. But whilst I'm doing that job, it'll also enable me to fit Esther's carbon fibre heater bubble. And before I do that, I can deal with any surface rust behind the metal heater bubble. So yeah, loads and loads of plans for this thing, loads and loads of plans for Maude. And obviously, if you've been following my recent videos, you'll know that I've got loads of plans to keep cracking on with Heidi as well, my other moredoor Mk2 Escort. So yeah, I'm going to be a busy boy this winter. This thing just spins. These tyres on the back are so rubbish. I've already purchased a pair of Yokohamas to put on the back, but just need to go back to the tyre shop to get them fitted. But yeah, even in the dry at the moment, I can't really drive this thing how I'd want to, but with a wet road, it's just ridiculous. Third gear. Now, although I'm not going to have time to do much over at the garage today because half the day's already gone, there is one thing that I want to put together for Heidi, and I'll be able to have a first good look at the inside of her doors now that the paint has dried. So I'll show you that as well. Move over!
Alright, I was hoping to put my Esther banner up in Esther's garage, but I gave my pot of raw plugs to my good friend Rob and forgot to get them back off him. So that'll have to wait. But I have just pulled Heidi's doors out into the sunlight and I'm very happy with how they've come out. Let me give you a closer look. Now I hope it's coming across on camera, but they are really glossy. There's not that much peel in it either. Yeah, they've just come out so good for rattle cans. I really hope you can see how glossy that is. Yeah, this sort of area here was what I was mainly focusing on, you know, trying to get a good wet coat on that so that when you open the doors, you'll see that. And obviously I'm going to get all the latches and stuff replated, but I mean, this had minimal prep. I didn't wet and dry it or anything. Just literally gave the primer a tickle with that Gold Flex sandpaper stuff, 500 grit, and literally one little dust coat and then a heavy coat of the beige, and yeah, well chuffed with how this has come out. I remember there being runs in certain places and I haven't noticed any yet. Admittedly, I'm trying not to look too close. Yeah, really happy. Again, you know, you'll see this bit when you open the door, but yeah, it's just nice and glossy, nice and smooth, and easily good enough for areas like this, you know, inside of doors and stuff like that. Now, I've got these 2-pack spray cans from BODICRAFT in Watford. I'll leave all their links in the description. I'll give you a quick look at the other two. Yeah, same story. Nice and shiny. There's the bottom of the door looking super shiny. And again, this area is the main bit that I was focusing on, trying to get shiny. This area here, you can see where I put the fiberglass over those tiny holes, and I left it thick on purpose so you can see that the shape isn't bang on, but it's the bottom of the doors. I didn't want to make that fiberglass filler too thin. There is a bit over here where it went a bit funny when I was putting the paint on. When I gave this door its final degrease, I didn't let the degreaser go off enough before then hitting it with the paint. Because yeah, when I painted this area, it sort of went all weird, as if the paint wasn't sticking properly. So, you know, I just waited. I got a little bit of tape and tried to, you know, take some of the paint off, and then just waited a while and then, you know, hit it with the paint as normal. And it's left a little bit of a roughness there. Just where, you know, it would have been bumpy, where the paint sort of wasn't sticking on that initial sort of spray, and it was basically loads of little runs. So yeah, but that is minor, you know, for a spray can job, if that's the only issue. It's the other side of that door where the hinges are and stuff. Yeah, absolutely over the moon with how these have come out. Now let me hunt and see if I can find at least one run. Alright, so on this door was where I saw the massive run around this area, and it was massive, but you know, most of it has sort of flowed out, and we're left with, you can just see a couple of little runs there, and that's remnants of a run. There's a little bit here, and saw another bit over here, yeah, just in there. So yeah, I just love how this paint, even when you do get a run, it just sort of flows out, you know, especially if you're painting things horizontal like I was with this door. So yeah, I mean, someone that's more talented than me will be able to get an even better finish than I have, but I'm really happy. I have found another little bit on one of the doors that looks a bit dodgy. Let me show you that. I don't know if it's going to sharpen the camera, but yeah, you can just see there what looks like some sort of reaction in the primer beneath. I'll have to ask my good friend Rob what that is. And just see it a little bit there as well. But yeah, we'll see. That may or may not get worse in the future. If I have to sort of, you know, sand this little area down and touch it in, then so be it. But for the most part, just look how good this paint looks. All right, so it started raining, so I decided to bring the doors back in here. But in terms of the passenger side front door, I'm actually thinking that maybe I should get someone to take the skin off of this door. The actual door itself is hanging, but this skin is okay apart from the bottom. Whereas the skin on this door is all dented everywhere at the top, although it's not rotten at the bottom or anything. So I'm just wondering if I can get someone to take that skin off that door, fit it to this door, and then just repair the bottom, which is just a flat piece. That might be the way to go. And there is one man I've got in mind that I know would be able to do an awesome job at this. Yeah, it's the same guy that actually painted Esther, my Mk1 originally. So if you're watching and you fancy doing this job for me, get in touch. Yeah, one more thing about these doors. A couple of people have said that I should try and spray inside the bottoms of them, especially, no, on this one where there was holes here that I've filled with fiberglass filler, and that's definitely something that I'm going to do. And then the inside of these doors will get some sort of cavity wax as well. So yeah, massive thanks as always to everyone who's been in touch with your advice. But right now I'm going to turn my attention to Heidi's fuel tank. Alright, so if you've been watching my videos, you would have seen that I recently gave Heidi's fuel tank a rattle can spray job. It doesn't look perfect. This is actually the side that you don't see. The other side does look a bit better. And I've just given this thing another quick rinse out with degreaser. I did give it a thorough rinse out before I painted it. Now, since then, I've had these bits re-zinc plated for the tank. This is like the breather or overflow pipe. And then we've got a couple of bolts and clips and washers, and then one of the two clips, I forgot to get the other one done, unfortunately. And yeah, this is like a sort of Jubilee clip. There should be another one of them actually, or another few of them. But yeah, basically I'm going to fit this pipe now to the fuel tank. And I think I'm just going to have a look at Maude's tank just to familiarise myself with how that pipe's supposed to go. Yeah, so as you can see, the pipe goes that side of the tank, and then you've got the black pipe going from the little nipple on the tank to the pipe, and then there's another black pipe down there that basically pokes out of the rear panel. And yeah, them two black pipes were luckily in good enough condition to reuse. And there you go, just a little bit of bling that you'll hardly see now fitted to Heidi's tank. Now I still need to get a brand new neck rubber thing, which are available, but what I can fit today is the fuel sender that goes in there, and that's the bit that basically wires up to your fuel gauge to let you know how much fuel you've got in the tank. Now the sender was, or still is, an absolute state, you know, covered in sort of old dried up fuel. So I need to give it a clean, and I need to give it a test before I fit it. Who's ringing me? Ah, my good friend Rob. Alright, so I've actually ended up taking this apart. Let me just show you how it was together. So you've got this sort of perished rubber O-ring that was on there, and then this was poked through there. Annoyingly, I can't remember which way around this was. Oh yeah, it'll be that way, like that. And then there's like a washer and a seal here, and then this nut was on there. So yeah, I took this apart because I tested it, and what I think you're supposed to do is test between here, which is where the wire goes on, which goes to your fuel gauge, test between that and this piece. And I did get continuity, and then you're supposed to like move the lever, because this float basically goes up and down as your fuel level, you know, depending on how much fuel you've got in your tank. This just floats on the top of the fuel. So yeah, you're supposed to like test for continuity, then move the lever, and then, you know, the continuity should change. So yeah, tested for continuity, I got a reading, and then moved the lever, tried to test again, and I'm getting nothing. And yeah, no matter where I put this, I'm getting nothing. So yeah, I don't know what's going on, but you can see this is really crusty. I wanted to test it before I clean it, just in case I end up ruining it whilst cleaning it. And it looks like I might have ruined it whilst testing it. But yeah, I mean, look how crusty this is. Proper manky. And that O-ring, which has now gone missing, oh no, still on the end of there, that looks, yeah, mullered. So I definitely need to replace that, even if I do get it working again, because if that ain't doing its job, then it's just going to leak fuel into the tank well of the car. So I think I'm going to clean this up, and then I'll put it back together and try and test it again. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed. I'm going to use this Kent brake parts cleaner to clean these bits up. Link in the description. At first, I tried to scrub this piece with a toothbrush, which wasn't harsh enough. So I tried a wire brush, which also wasn't doing much. And look at all that. So I started scraping the crud out with a screwdriver instead. I tried using sandpaper on the float rod, but then I decided to dismantle things further. So I took some pictures so I could remember how things went back together, and then started taking things apart. The main casing had these tabs which I needed to bend open with pliers. This one I needed to bend open with a screwdriver, and then the two halves of the sender unit came apart. Both pieces, inside and out, were just so clogged up with crud. Alright, I have aborted cleaning up Heidi's fuel sender because it's getting dark, and I think I can do a better job of cleaning it up at home. I've now taped these holes back up on the tank, because now that the tank's had its final flush out, I don't want to get any dust in there. Oh, and I forgot to add these clips earlier on. These bolts and washers are, yeah, pretty pitted. They were pretty badly rusted. I will change the washers, but yeah, the bolts can go again. You can't see these are sort of under the car. So what I need to do now is get Esther back in her garage, and I'm obviously going to be taking Maude home with me. I have added Maude's brand new stickers now as well, and I've put a little bit more gear oil in her axle because I wasn't able to completely fill it up last time. And yeah, once I finish packing up around here, I'm actually going to pass through and see my good friend Rob, who is obviously doing the paintwork on Heidi's body shell at the moment, and we're going to have a discussion about when he's going to show me how to do a bit of painting the proper way with a spray gun and a compressor. But other than that, I'm going to continue this video at home, when hopefully I'll be able to get that fuel sender working properly. Hello, into a new day, and since the last clip I have spent hours and hours on Heidi's fuel sender, and as you can see, these pieces are looking a little bit cleaner now. I basically had to just scrape all the crud off of, well, all the pieces. You know, I used a Stanley blade to scrape all the crud off the outside of this bit. There was loads on the inside as well. I just had to use like a little screwdriver, obviously being careful of the sort of coiled up wire thing in there. And yeah, same deal with this. Just had to scrape all the crud off it. Used a Stanley blade to scrape all the crud off of this bit that holds the float. Yeah, this thing was a right state. This piece here, there's actually more crud in these areas than I first thought. Yeah, once I started digging, I realised that you had these sort of semicircle cutouts on it. They were just full of crud, and I thought that was like the shape of it. But yeah, these bits are looking a whole lot better now, and I think I've got it working. But before I show you that, let me explain how I think this fuel level sender works, and feel free to let me know in the comments if I've got this wrong. So the wire comes from your fuel gauge, and it's attached to this thread. You know, this is like that on the outside of your tank, and it goes into this piece. Now, in between this stud and this casing is a bit of what I assume is nylon. This piece here is not metal. So this stud is insulated from this casing. The only way that the current can get from here to the casing is through this arrangement here, where you've got like a coil of wire wrapped around something or other. I'm assuming that bit isn't metal. I have worked out that this piece here isn't metal that sits behind it. That's also insulating this from the casing. And as you can see, this piece is narrow at one end and wider at the other end. And basically that's going to alter the resistance between this stud here and this little stud here, which is where this stud is joined to the casing. So, you know, going through this thing here alters the resistance essentially. Now, this bit here, which, you know, rises and falls when your fuel level changes, obviously controls this little gizmo here. And the end of this here basically rubs along that track, yeah? So depending on how full or empty your tank is, depends on whereabouts this little stud here is contacting on this sort of track, right? So this goes together something like that. As this lever's moved up and down, the little stud is running along the track, which is the other side of this outer wall of the casing, obviously. So I'm guessing that, you know, because it's narrow at one end and it's wider at the other end, wherever this is touching on this is going to alter the resistance. And the way I understand it, and I might be wrong, is that, you know, when you've got nothing connected to this, you know, I can measure the resistance and, you know, it's forced to go from here through that track to here. But with these two halves together, you know, because this metal piece is touching the casing here, it means that wherever this is on that track, it's going to bypass. So instead of going from here through the track to here, it's going to go from here through the track and then through this and then into this piece, and then this piece conducts the electricity into the casing, and then this casing is obviously attached to this, and then eventually that goes back to ground. That's how I understand it. I may be completely wrong, but essentially the resistance changes wherever that thing is on the track. Now I have been sort of messing around with this bit and just bending it in different like positions to make sure that it's bent out enough to touch on this track. But, you know, when it was bent out too much, it would then be rubbing on it so that it doesn't move freely. So, you know, I've spent quite a lot of time getting this to the point where I think it's touching the right amount because, you know, I've cleaned up this little bit. I've cleaned up the track in there with a bit of sandpaper. So, you know, it obviously all got bent out of whack a little bit. But, yeah, the last time I tested it, it worked pretty well. And also, because I assume that the way this works relies on the current being able to go from this piece of the casing to this piece, I've actually, you know, cleaned up a couple of these tabs, which will obviously get bent back down when it's all put back together properly. I've tried to sand these areas, you know, where they touch. And on the other side here, I've cleaned up this area and this area quite a lot because that's where the tab's going to be bent round to. So, yeah, just trying to improve the conductivity between these two pieces because I think it kind of works in that way. But anyway, so that can go like that. This just goes together, and I'll just make sure that this is, you know, against the track and make sure that I'm not bending anything out of shape. That goes through there. You can see that one tab comes through that hole, and the other three, or the other two, will just get bent down. And on the other side, you know, you've got this shaft that comes through that hole. And yeah, that just moves like that. And I can actually feel the thing rubbing on the track. But when it was bent out too much, it was sort of like, which is obviously, you know, too tight. You don't want to put it all back together and then, you know, you fill your tank up and the float goes up, and then as the fuel empties, the float doesn't come back down because there's too much friction, you know. So it's got to have, you know, it's got to have not too much friction, but also it's got to have some friction so that it conducts the current. Anyway, so with this all together, I'm just going to lean this piece on these scissors just so that this like spindle or shaft, you know, isn't rubbing against the table. So now I've got my multimeter set to ohms on 200 at the bottom there, and I'm basically going to put one of these pins on the casing there, and I always sort of try and push down, you know, because as I say, you want the conductivity to be strong between this and this piece. Obviously it will be once you bend the tabs back round. And then the other thing on the multimeter, I'm going to touch on this stud, which is where your wire attaches to. It's a better angle and it seems to be working. So with the lever all the way up, we're getting around 11 or 12. And then if I move the lever down, it goes up to like 76. And it does jump around a little bit. But yeah, if we go sort of halfway, you know, 24, go up a little bit, 30, up a little bit more, 40, 41, up a little bit more, 51, we go down but not all the way down, 18, 19, and then all the way down. See, it sort of jumps around a bit. It's almost like all the way at the bottom it's not quite working correctly. So we've got 16 there. Oh, now it is. But yeah, it definitely appears to be working. Now I think I am going to spend a bit more time cleaning this lot up. I'm going to do some research and see if it's worth putting some sort of grease inside on the mechanism, you know, maybe something that conducts electricity. I'm guessing you'd need something that conducts electricity, or maybe not. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think that sort of casing's watertight, so maybe the fuel sort of keeps things lubed up. I don't know. As I say, I'm going to do a bit of research, and yeah, maybe just have another little mess around with bending this a bit, because yeah, it just seems like sometimes at one end it doesn't seem to work properly. At the other end, it doesn't matter. You know, at the end where the resistance is big, it doesn't matter, because that's obviously where the fuel tank is empty. So it just means that once the tank gets to a certain amount, it will just read nothing on your fuel gauge, which is, you know, how they work anyway. You know, when it reads empty, you've still got like quite a bit of fuel in there. So that doesn't matter. But it's at the opposite end, you know, when it sort of gets to full, you don't want it to read empty until it sort of comes off of full, if my head is understanding it right. But yeah, for the most part, it appears to work. I'm not going to finally push these bits back together yet until I've had another play and another clean, because I need to replace this O-ring anyway. That's definitely had it. And I may as well see if I can get a new one of these seals. This seal definitely looks like it will go again, but seeing as this isn't going straight back into Heidi's tank, I've got time to see if I can purchase another one. And yeah, other than that, you know, it's just got to press these two back together, fold the tabs back over, obviously put the float back on the end of there, and yeah, it should be good to go. But there is actually one other thing I've been messing around with for Heidi today, and if you've been watching my videos, you would have seen me tackle this job quite recently, but I wasn't happy with it. So today I redone it, and it is Heidi's steering column that I've got hanging up on this cupboard door, which is really handy for this. Yeah, this morning I resprayed this thing in my shed. This time I used the Kent satin black paint, because when I painted this last time, it came out matte. It wasn't even satin. I used Halford's paint, and I was doing it in less than ideal conditions, but yeah, I didn't like how it looked. So yeah, basically I keyed up the Halford's paint, gave it a good clean, masked all this lot back up again, and this time I used a hairdryer to heat the column before I started painting, and I was using the hairdryer between coats as well, but also I put the can in a bowl of hot water before the job and between coats as well. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this is touch dry now, but I'm not going to bother risking touching it just in case. But yeah, that is a proper decent satin finish. So yeah, I'm much more happy with how this has come out. I was a bit worried about reaction, but you know, I put the first couple of coats on, you know, a real light dust coats, and as I say, I did key everything up as best as I could before I did the job. So fingers crossed that will fully dry without any reaction. But as I say, the finish is awesome. So yeah, really loving the Kent satin black paint. So there you go. I wasn't quite able to get Heidi's fuel tank fully ready to fit, but I'm glad that that fuel sender does seem like it is going to work, so I won't have to purchase one of them. And I am over the moon with how the paint has dried on the inside of her doors, and I'm feeling much better about the paint on her steering column now. Now in the next video, I've got a really exciting update on Heidi, so definitely stay tuned for that. I'm actually filming this now on New Year's Eve, and I'm going to try and get this video out today. So I hope you guys enjoy your New Year's Eve celebrations, and I look forward to staying super busy on the cars and on YouTube in 2024. So that's all I've got for this video. Massive thanks as always to everyone who's tuned in. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe if you're new. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. Check out my website for merchandise and car parts. Massive thanks as always to my patrons for your ongoing support. I'll leave all the links to everything in the description, along with my email address for anyone who wants to contact me. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.